this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, January 14th, 2019, and the time is 7:30 p.m. Dr. Hillman, there were a number of items in the table file.
Yes, this evening in the table file we added a gift agreement. There were also several appointments, increase, decrease, and change in assignment. There was a leave of absence. There was also the exciting, I'm going to use the term exciting, January 10th, 2019 sale day report for our bond sale. And then in addition, we have also included some information that we are fortunate, quote unquote fortunate, to have been selected for state and federal administrative review of our child nutrition programs at Greenville Park and the Sun program with SevSec. And there was a little bit of a joke there, but yes, we will be audited for Greenville Park and for the Sun program with SevSec, which our child nutrition department provides the meals for. So that is just an item for information for you.
Are they still working?
They will be by the time they come back, so that's what they believe. They've notified us anyway.
Excellent.
Those are your table file items for this evening.
All right, thank you very much. If there's no objections, we'll add these items to the agenda as we move forward. We now have an opportunity for public comment. This is a chance for anyone residing in the Northfield Public School District to address the board. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board? Seeing no one come forward, we'll move on with announcements and recognitions. Dr. Hillman.
And we have no announcements or recognitions this evening.
Okay, well, moving right along. So we'll move to items discussion and report. We'll start with our first report. We welcome Northfield High School physical education and health teachers, Leah Sand and John Sand, who are going to present a report on vaping. So welcome. We're really excited to have you here.
And as they're coming forward, I invited John and Leah to come and provide a presentation that they gave to our high school staff, I believe in November. And I think it's really important information for the community to hear, not only board members, but for the viewing audience, because I think most adults, frankly, will be shocked by some of the tools that are used in a phenomenon known as vaping, or I think it's also even called e-cigarettes. And so we're very thankful for Leah and John to come here and share some information with you this evening.
I'm John, this is Leah. We are both Phy Ed health teachers at the high school. We also are involved with Rally, which is a leadership group at the high school, and we're also involved with LOA, which is kind of a subset of Rally. And both of those, one of the main components of those groups is being chemically free. And this all kind of started as a meeting of the Rally advisors, and we were kind of discussing what we were going to talk about at the next meeting. And vaping was kind of hot on the subject recently because there was a handful of student athletes who had gotten in trouble and lost their 2 weeks for vaping. And it kind of started as all the adults in the room were talking about what's going on in the world of vaping, and we didn't really understand it ourselves. We'd seen some of it, we understand about it. The e-cigarette craze has been around for quite a while at this point, but it felt like it has gone another level. And then so in our conversation, and Leah and I have had a lot of conversations with student athletes in the school and just students in general, and it keeps coming up as a major problem. We hear the kids that trust us and are in those groups talking about how they see it a lot, and so it got us just thinking we needed to understand it better ourselves. Right at that meeting that we were having, I actually went into Jeff Eckhoff's office and raided his confiscation drawer of all the stuff that he's taken from students here at the high school. And I'm going to have Leah just kind of set them out here so you kind of start to see them. And one of the main things that we tried to do with our talk with the staff, and we ended up doing this with some student groups too, is we just wanted people to see the devices and actually understand what they look like and what they're capable of doing. And so that was our main goal tonight too, is to bring them and just kind of educate as to what they do and what they are capable, to the best of our knowledge anyways. So it was an interesting, as I'm talking to Mr. Eckhoff, he actually gave me these, and these were all that had been taken from our Northfield High School students within the past couple of weeks. And so that was the other side of it, is like, okay, that was another confirmation that they're everywhere. And so as you're looking at this table, and I'm going to kind of walk them around at some point to show so you guys can see them a little bit better. There's three obvious ones that are fairly big. And these are kind of the first devices that were out about. These devices are actually fairly expensive. To get into using these, it costs you several $100s. And I'll kind of explain a little bit how they work in a second. And then the other devices, and this one specifically is the Jewel. And that's the one that kind of started the whole smaller device craze. As you see, a lot of the other ones, some of them even look like, if you've ever seen a highlighter pen that has the 3 different sides that you can color in the different, and they look a lot like that. A lot of people will say that this one looks like a USB drive, which it does and it doesn't. I mean, it's a lot bigger and longer than a USB drive kind of thing, but it gets you that kind of idea. So we pulled them out and kind of looked at them, and in that rally meet I decided, well, I'm going to go do some research. And so I watched a bunch of YouTube videos on people using it and saw lots of people actually using it. Saw a couple different videos where people were actually rating them, and it was amazing. The ones they rated literally were the ones that I had taken from Mr. Eckhoff's drawer. And I come to find out that this was the first device kind of that was being used, or this style of a device. And I learned a little bit about chemistry. It's if you're a chemist, this is actually all chemistry. It's a whole bunch of science that goes into this. And so these types of vaping tools use free-base nicotine. And so free-base nicotine is the same style of nicotine that you would find in a cigarette. And so if you buy a cigarette and you're going to smoke a cigarette, it's free-base nicotine that's in it. And the free-base nicotine, when used in a cigarette where it's actually burned and turned into smoke, it is going to provide a really quick buzz, that high, that feeling that people are going to want when they use it. But when it is heated up in a vaping tool, which creates the vapor instead of creating the smoke, the free-base nicotine does not act in the same way as it does when it's burned in tobacco. So what happened was they created these, and you do get nicotine from them, but you don't get the quick buzz that you would get from burning tobacco. And so they advertised them, even this style, as a way to stop smoking and to get people to quit smoking and use a vaping tool instead. But it didn't give cigarette users the same feeling, and so it didn't really work that well. And it didn't give them that satisfaction that they were looking for by what they're used to with smoking. So more chemistry needed to be happened, and they had to create a new way to do it, which is what Juul ended up doing. So Juul was created, and what they did was they did use something called nicotine salts. And nicotine salts has been around forever. It's just as a little bit different form of nicotine. Both the freebase and the nicotine salts have chemicals added to them to give the user the feeling that they're looking for. Tobacco companies years and years and years ago realized that if we add chemicals to the tobacco so that when you smoke it, you're going to get that feeling, and you're going to get that feeling right now. And that makes you addicted. That hooks you on it. With the Juul, they figured out a way to do that with nicotine salts, which upped the level of nicotine a lot higher than the free-base nicotine. And because of that, you got the same feeling as cigarettes. And so the original design of this product was to get people to stop smoking. And it actually works a whole lot better than the other style, but they didn't really advertise it that way. And kind of interestingly enough, as we did these talks with different groups, you started to hear Juul commercials on the radio. They've been in the paper. They've been everywhere, and that's this company backtracking because they did do a lot of advertising to younger users. The devices, the flavors were all, fruit-based and all that kind of stuff. So the problem that we ran into was this does give them the quick feeling that they're after. And the other thing that happened is the cloud that this creates is much, much diminished compared to the old style. And there are still people that prefer the other style because it creates big, huge clouds. And they actually call them cloud chasing, and they're more into the clouds than the feeling. And they'll create big clouds and play with it and do different tricks with it. These don't do this. This is just straight about the feeling. And so through this research and figuring some of that stuff out, there's what we kind of realized was you can do this in the middle of class. You could do this walking down the hallway. You could do this just about anywhere, and nobody would know that you're using it. And I'm going to give Leah here a chance to talk about kind of some of the talks we did. But as we did the talks with the high school kids, some of the high school kids would come up and say, yep, I've seen it in class. I've seen them using it here. And one of the, after I talked about something, one kid came up and said, yeah, I saw a kid sitting right next to me using it. And they held it in, and I kind of watched them, and I watched them for a long enough time. I'm like, what are they going to do? And they just did this, or blew it down the shirt, and it was gone. Because the cloud is not so big and huge, they can blow it into the corner of the room, and it dissipates really fast, and so nobody's the wiser that it's being used. You can't get away with that with this style. And so that older style was something you would get caught if you did it in the middle of the classroom, because it would create this big cloud that everybody would see. So I'm going to let Leah talk a little bit about what it is. I'm going to bring these around so you can actually see them up and close and personal.
So one of the things that got us at the staff meeting in November was, what if the ninth graders or the new kids or kids that don't know think that's what we do here is we vape at Northfield High School. I don't want them to think that. John doesn't want them to think that. I don't think any teacher wants people to think that that's what we do at Northfield High School. So what we just said to you guys, we presented at the staff meeting, and John presented at the rally meeting, and John and I presented to our 9th grade FIAD classes, and I presented to my Walking for Wellness classes and my health class. And we talked about the science and how it affects users and things like that. But one of the biggest things that we said was, say something. If you see a kid doing this in class, tell them to knock it off. Tell them to stop. They're more likely to stop if you say something than if you just watch them do it, right? Does that mean that everybody's all of a sudden going to stop vaping at Northfield High School? Probably not. But does that mean that some kids are going to stop vaping at Northfield High School? Yes, right? And so we said that to our 9th graders, and I have upperclassmen that I said that to, say something. I don't know if they have, but I had students too come up to me and say, Mrs. Sand, I saw somebody vaping in my study hall. Yep, you probably did. Make sure you say something. We also told our students, like, hey, you can talk to us, and we will help you out if you want help, right? You can tell me that you think somebody's doing something in your class, and I'll work to figure it out, okay? When we presented to our teachers, we obviously said, tell your classes that it's not okay to vape in your classroom. Say, like, that's not okay in my classroom. If you think students, I know a teacher in particular in our building was like, I know that you guys have been vaping in my classroom because somebody just told me that, and you can't do it anymore. And the kids' expressions were like, but do you think that changed the atmosphere in his classroom? Absolutely. So say something, right? That's what we want our kids to do. Just say something. Tell them to knock it off. Tell somebody else to tell them to knock it off. Tell the teacher, like, hey, something's happening in this classroom. You need to pay closer attention, right? Any of those statements. Doesn't mean you have to say who. It doesn't mean you have to say what. You just need to say something, right, to somebody. That's a big deal. Kids don't want to tell on other kids. I get that. They don't have to say their names, though. They can just say, something not right is happening in my classroom. Just tell somebody. That makes a big difference. Is there something else I was supposed to say?
I was going to say, after we did that, we did have, both of us had kids come up and, tell us about experiences and what they've seen and things like that. And we actually had at least 2 or 3 teachers that said they went back after the staff meeting and just addressed every one of their classes too and said, hey, it's not allowed, it's not okay, and like, please don't do it, basically is what it comes down to. So.
Well, I think what I was going to say, we showed the teachers the devices too, because not everybody knows what they are or what they look like, and this is really just a small sampling of what they can look like. They can look like ink pens. There's just so many different ways that they come that it's important to be educated and ask questions, like, what is that? We know that Jewel, wherever it is, sat on a desk for more than 4 days in a row, just out in the open before it was confiscated.
And that was really our main goal, was the adults in the building just hadn't caught up with the newest technology when it comes to vaping. So.
Yeah, and like John said, now there's a bunch of, Jewel especially, this is for people to stop smoking, and they're kind of doing some backtracking now, and in the news they're talking about teenagers that are in rehab for vaping because they're just so addicted. There was a Nightline video shared with us, a student that has their highlighter or pen in one hand and their vape in the other, and they actually can't get through their homework without having that vape in their hand. That's a big deal.
So if you're like me, when you saw these things, you're like, oh my goodness, who knew, right? And I think that the key piece why I asked John and Leah to come is because Northfield has a history of rallying around our children and our kids when there's an unhealthy item added to the environment. And so I really felt it was important for John and Leah to come and share this with you as members of the school board. Also to be able to record it so that Bruce could see these pieces, so that when people watch this on NTV or they might watch it on the school board video channel, people have an opportunity to see what it's like, because this is not just a Northfield thing. You know, we have, in fact, right after, it was interesting, right after they gave the presentation, you saw the New York Times article, you saw the Washington Post article. If you open the Star Tribune, as they said, every Sunday, and they now have in huge, it's got to be 30-point font, you know, this is not intended for children, yet if you look at their early marketing tools and the flavors that they're choosing, the reasonable person comes to a different conclusion. And so, as we've said, there's some and this is an example of where some of this technology is so far ahead, you know, of what we're able to do, because you could have never pulled out a cigarette in a classroom and have gotten away with it, right? I mean, barely could do it in a bathroom or those things, but the fact is that these are intended to be concealed. And so this is a matter of the adults becoming aware. It is not healthy. I think that's the other piece that we're trying to get across to students. I think some people perceive that this does not have the same negative health effects that traditional smoking or other tobacco use would. But would you just briefly talk about that? Because actually I think the research that we're seeing coming out is it's as damaging, if not worse.
There's been a couple of different things. The original, like, early liquids that you would put inside them, one of the biggest problems they originally had was the chemical they put in to change the viscosity of the liquid was the same chemical that was in microwave popcorn. And the FDA had actually okayed it for eating, but not okayed it for inhaling, because the workers on the microwave popcorn lines that inhaled the chemical when they were putting it on the popcorn developed, they actually called it popcorn lung, but it was a disease of the lung. And so they actually, some of the early fluids, they found that they were developing some of the same stuff in the e-cigarette users. Now most e-cigarette companies have gone to, okay, we know we can't do that, right? But so they're constantly changing it. The big advantage for smokers, if you are someone who actually has smoked, is by inhaling the vapor instead of the smoke, burned substance, you're not getting some of those chemicals into your body that we know cause cancer. One of the biggest problems with the e-cigarette fluid is it still has chemicals in it, but we haven't tested those chemicals for anywhere near the amount of time that we can to completely say they're healthy. I think most people would say using a vaping tool instead of smoking, if you've already been an addicted smoker, is the only thing that might be smarter. It's still not healthy. But yeah, you're still putting chemicals in that are changing your body. That's definitely not good. And the scary thing is that it's young kids that brains who are not developed yet that's going to cause a problem. So there's, if you look at anything online, any articles, any research thing about there, the biggest thing they immediately say is we still don't even have a clue as to what it's going to do down the road. So. And
not to forget that nicotine is a drug.
Well, right, yeah, you're still taking nicotine, and nicotine is
I think
addictive.
Early on, whether a lot of youth would say, but there's no nicotine in this, and they maybe didn't even really know that there was, right? They just thought it was fun flavors and smoke and things like that, but it is really difficult to come by e-liquid that doesn't have nicotine in it.
Right.
Amy. So I've heard a lot over the years about how smoking is decreasing. So one of my questions is, do you think that the reason smoking is decreasing is because vaping is increasing? And sort of along with that question is, do you have any idea how prevalent vaping is in general or in the Northfield School District, or however you can answer that question?
Well, yes, there's less smokers because I think more people are vaping because in a sense that's trendy, and if I was a smoker, this is a little bit better option for me if I'm addicted to nicotine already. How many?
I don't think I could
don't
even
think I
guess
could even begin to
offhand
guess.
as to what, how much we're using it.
You know, there's a difference between use daily, use once a month, have tried it. I would think we would all be really alarmed at the number of students at our high school that have tried vaping. I think that number would be scarily high.
I don't think the kids can even predict like how many people are using it, but when we talk to kids that are in those groups, they all say it's a huge problem.
There's not a student that I've asked about, do you know somebody who vapes? I've never had somebody say no. And I think also every one of my students would say they've seen somebody vaping at school.
Yep.
And I want to point out that the number of things, I'm sure this was just a sampling, John. And so, you know, the fact would be that these are the things that we have learned about and know about. So this is just a handful of, what were there, 10 items here?
Something like that,
You know,
yeah.
so we know that administration has intervened on at least 10 occasions, and of course, we know that it's more than that. I think the key thing is that, as John said, I don't think we can hazard a guess at this point. We just don't have a lot of data. There's a lot of data on smoking, right? The Minnesota Student Survey, some other pieces, you know, where we have long-term data. This is such a recent phenomenon that we don't have, you know, the data to be able to make a judgment in terms of what's the level of issue. And as John and Leah also pointed out, there might be a person who tried it, you know, for the first time and they've not done it again. There might be people, there are people who are using this multiple times a day. There are some who are using it once a week. I think the key thing is that we wanted to bring it to the adults' attention in the community because we know when Northfield identifies an issue that impacts our youth's health, we rally around it. We don't make judgments. We figure out what can we do to try to help solve the issue and help empower students to do exactly what the SANs have said. Tell people to knock it off, enlist adult assistance, and then continue to work on it. One of the things that I do want to share with the board is that in our partnership with Newgard Communications in February, we're going to launch a campaign for in Northfield around this topic. And so we're going to be using a number of the strategies that we've learned that have been helpful in the past. So we've also gotten some commitment of funding from the Healthy Community Initiative to help fund a little bit more of a informational campaign than we would necessarily do on our own. But it will involve a number of different pieces, including some posters. It will include at least weekly messages to parents during the month of February, all K-12, right? Because the fact is that we want elementary parents to know, even though it might not directly impact them, we want it for them to know if they see it in their neighborhood. We'll use our time on the radio to work through that. You know, and again, using our social media, we will also be looking at, is it feasible for us to send a postcard, you know, to all families in the district, you know, with a QR code where they can go and learn a little bit more. We're going to try this approach because it's what we're calling a 1-month blitz, right? Rather than just saying something to somebody every other week or whatever, we want to really immerse people in the community with this information so that they are aware of, first of all, you know, what to look for. The second, how they can, you know, help intervene, and it really is going to take the old proverbial community to make sure that, you know, the students know that, hey, people are wise to this. Number one, that will cut down a lot of it. Number two, that we're helping people in terms of avoid it, and if there are people who do have some kind of issue where they're struggling, that we can intervene as well with some professional help within the system. So this is something that we want to make sure people are aware of. We want to make sure that we leverage the audience that we have through all of the different communication channels that we've got to be able to help grandparents and neighbors and aunts and uncles and other friends to know this is something that students are doing that most of you probably have no clue about, and we want to give you the tools to intervene should you see it happening, or can you coach and tell young people this is not okay. And so of course there's a difference between this and other kinds of addictive drugs and things like that. But at the same time, it is a piece that is something that we are concerned about because we know that it is an issue. To say how big of it, to what extent of an issue it is, I don't think any of us can reasonably look you and say that, you know, to say what it is. I do agree. I think there are far more young people using this than any of us would like to admit or could even frankly predict. Now, does that mean that we want to be very careful. This is not something that every child in, you know, 6th through 12th grade, that's not, but it is larger than what I think any of us would like to admit. To say it's a majority, we wouldn't go that far, but the fact is it is a substantial, or I would say a critical mass that brought us to the concern.
I think it goes into its technology too. and the kids love technology. Which is, as I was listening to you talk and thinking about how big of a deal it is, I think the same thing that I've observed in the last 3 months with the kids and AirPods, right? I started to see a few kids with AirPods in their ears, and it just exploded. And then Christmas happened, and it's exploded to another level. And I think they see them and they just use them. And I think the same thing happened with these. And it's such a new technology, and it's such a small device. A few people had it, and then it started to spread, and it just kind of exploded. And in that regard, has there been a Minnesota survey on it? And have we actually checked into that? And have we actually tried to figure out how many people are using it? I don't think it's happened so fast that I don't think there's any data that we've been able to get on it yet.
And let's be clear, we prefer everyone to be using AirPods versus
Yes,
using
AirPod technology
AirPods or
would be better.
headphones, they're wireless headphones, just to make sure that
Right.
people know what they are.
Yes, Amy?
So Matt, is using vaping or e-cigarettes, is that expressly forbidden in the student handbooks?
Yes, it is. And, going back to those larger devices, back when those things first became an issue, the policies were changed to include the term e-cigarettes. And of course, what John mentioned, that we've had some student athletes who have violated the state high school league rules, because again, the state high school league is actually usually ahead of, they're usually on the forefront of saying that these are things that now violate the policy. So I don't know for how long, but for several years, we have had the piece around that including e-cigarettes. I know it's in the last decade, it's in the time that I've been here, because I remember when the policy change came to the board. So it is within the last decade. These original items were the ones that prompted it, because it became something that was starting to be sold at tobacco stores and those kinds of things. So our policy has expressly forbade it for some time.
So does that mean that those items will not be returned to their owners at any point, even though they might be worth hundreds of dollars?
That is correct.
Okay.
They also they're treated as having cigarettes, so if you're under 18, you can't have them. Like even having the device, whether it has any nicotine or liquid in it, it's the same thing. So law enforcement treats them in the same way. If you're under 18, you're not allowed that thing. So.
Tom?
As a parent of 2 teenage boys, I can validate everything you've said. In your conversation with the students, did you ask anybody why they use it?
I have not necessarily asked that, no. That's a good question. Like I said, I think part of it is because their friend used it, or I think it spreads that way. I think it's probably the biggest thing. I'm sure there are people that are using it because they're possibly self-treating other problems. They're looking for it could be whether it's an addiction in something else, or they're struggling with anxiety or depression or something like that. They might look for something to give them that feeling that they want to feel good about it. So I'm sure there are people that are doing that for that reason, but then I think there are also, my friends using it, so I'm going to try it in that, pure thing that's always going on with high school kids.
And I think too, like in our health class, we talk about the perception that everybody's doing it. We try to get rid of that perception, because that's not true. Just like Dr. Hillman was saying, that not everybody is doing this, but if you see a few doing it, you might think a lot more people are, and then maybe I'm curious, maybe I want to do what everybody else is doing, kind of thing.
Do we have any support to help them stop?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of, we do have a partnership with a chemical health specialist now, that part-time, but we do have access to that. And in addition, we would also counsel people that they could also get assistance on their own, though I think that the phenomenon of the addiction to this is, I think we're just learning about who are the folks who are addicted to it. And so I think that part of this conversation is really just beginning to come to our understanding, as they had mentioned, just seeing for the first time a story that indicated that there are some students not here in Northfield that we know of, but was a national story indicating that there are people who are actually using some rehabilitation services to do that. So we would offer, all the same kinds of things we would if someone was in trouble for using tobacco or any other kind of substance that is prohibited by school policy.
Amy?
We have a handful of students here, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I was wondering if one or more of you might come up and comment on this. Anybody feel? You'll come up? Come on up. Say your name and your grade.
Oh, nerve-wracking, honestly. So I'm Laura Gates. I'm a senior this year, and I don't do it myself because I just don't believe it's a good thing. But I know it's like directly affected like how our school day is run. Like teachers aren't like technically, I guess, I don't know, it's like they're suggesting that they don't let us go to the bathroom certain hours of the day because they want to like prevent us from vaping. And like also too, I don't necessarily like surround myself with that culture, so I don't know a lot about it. But I do know that like they were saying, like it is like it's more of the group that you're in, and most people do it to fit in with other people. And I mean that's all I know about it. So yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? How about a boy? Is there a boy who'll come up? Okay.
Hi, I'm Cole Steinberg. I'm a senior this year. I haven't seen it in school, but I have seen kids carrying devices into the school. And then I know during flex period, when I go over to lunch, I will see people walking down the sidewalk that are seniors, and they'll just have this big, huge cloud just right behind them, following them, and they don't even let, it just stays in their mouth the whole time. And I have seen other kids doing it outside of school too, but I really haven't seen it inside yet, but not saying that it doesn't happen either.
Cole, I'm sorry we didn't catch your last name.
Steinberg.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments board members have? Well, Leah and John, we so appreciate this presentation. I think that it really is quickly becoming a public health crisis. I did see one statistic that said in the last year, 20% of high school seniors have vaped. But again, there's all kinds of other questions you'd have around that data. And from our discussion tonight, that appears to probably be a low percent, as it is really escalating. And I appreciate Dr. Hillman, the district, moving for informational campaign. I think it will be really informative for parents. I think what we all learned tonight, we've learned a lot. I did hear from staff that they really appreciated the time you took to do the presentation, and I think the awareness is building. I think the national media is helping with that. There's been a number of stories on nightly news, which helps, but I think parents need to see that it is here and it is, within the building of where their kids go to school every day. So, hopefully there's some call to action there for them to really start to pay attention, because I think that the timing of the campaign is good timing. We know that it's really starting to amp up, and I think with some of the national media helping with some of the stories they're doing really just sort of supports what we're saying. And so excellent. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Okay, we will move on now to...
Yes, make sure you take all that stuff back. You don't need to have that.
Leave one for me. So we'll move now to what we look forward to every year, our annual report from our two amazing charter schools, Prairie Creek and Arcadia. We'll begin with Simon Tyler, who's the director of Prairie Creek Community School. His PowerPoint presentation was part of our packet.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for having us out here. Thank you, John and Leah, as well. That was a fascinating presentation from my perspective. Even as an elementary school director, you're sort of always looking at what's coming out there for our students, so I really appreciated it. Thank you. It's also great to see all the high school students here as well today, seeing governance in action, so I applaud them all for taking the time to be here this evening. It's my 8th year as director at Prairie Creek, and I realize that means that's 8 times many of you have heard this or a similar presentation, so apologies in advance. And even for the newer members like Amy and Tom, you heard it for several years as a parent at Prairie Creek, so even worse for you. We will endeavor to be fairly brief in our summary of how things are going at our schools. We know you have a lot to do this evening, and I've brought along with me this evening teacher Kathy Armkey, who's going to give you a little insight into our professional development model at Prairie Creek, so hopefully that'll be a fresh perspective on our school you haven't heard before. Innovative professional development. We're a small school. In our mission, we aim to be a teacher-powered school. So what Kathy will talk about later, after I've gone through my slides, is a little bit of how our teachers lead our professional development model and our innovative work around that. Our mission remains unchanged. The 4 pillars we've stood on for 35 years now, that we're a community school, child-centered school, a progressive school, that we aim to make the world a better place. I'll get to a couple of slides on this later, but we've just finished our work developing a new strategic plan for the school, so we've spent a lot of time digging back into our mission and what it means for us in our current context and where we want to go next. I'll talk a little more about that. Key characteristics of progressive education. I've shared this slide with you before. Again, I think in the last 12 months, in teacher meetings, board meetings, community listening sessions, we've really dug deep into these key tenets of what we try to do within the 4 pillars of our mission and how it plays out in terms of our physical space, outdoor learning, our commitment to multi-age, authenticity in our assessment model, creativity, inquiry, and play, and then use that as the foundation for our conversation for where we're going next. You had a data review sheet in your packet, and we give you that really as a summary of the more in-depth report, which is our annual report, which you're certainly happy to peruse to see a lot more data. Really, what we want you to get out of, one thing out of this meeting is an assurance that we are a well-run, successful, public, progressive charter school. So within that summary sheet, you see a little bit around our World's Best Workforce Plan, some basic proficiency data. We're not shy about owning the fact that we do, in our model, de-emphasize the importance of standardized tests in our approach, and yet we do also acknowledge that we're a public school, and that data is something that our authorizer contractually looks at with how we're doing. So I give you that to shove it in the core areas that are assessed by the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessments. We do perform consistently above the state average in those standardized assessments, and there's 3-year trend data in there for you to see. We also have a commitment to a very careful financial model, as all public schools should, particularly small public schools like ours. And you can see the graph in front of you shows that in our financial plan to maintain a 25% fund balance 3 years out in all our financial planning, we've just had a very slow, steady decline in that fund balance, but always keeping within policy. The only piece I'd add to that is Matt, Dr. Hillman comes out and does his site visit every year, and he's coming this Friday. And one thing Dr. Hillman always does, we appreciate, is he sits down with our board, he sits down with our Chief Financial Officer, Keith Johnson, and we have an in-depth conversation about our finances. Dr. Hillman gives his perspective from a bigger context, and we talk about how we manage that in our small model. You'll see a little bit of information in there about some new initiatives. I'll talk more about those. One is our arts residency. We got a huge commitment to the arts as part of our mission. So you hear our model of having an annual residency every year, typically around this time in January. Last year our focus was on poetry. Rob Hardy came out and was one of our guests and worked with the children, created poetry. This year we're doing something very exciting. We have a circus residency. It's happening right now, and we have a company, Circus Juventus, which is out of St. Paul. They've been around for about 14 years, and with the support of a very generous Minnesota State Arts Board grant, we've been able to contract to work with the circus artists for the whole of January. We took some photographs there for you of the children. Just last week, up in St. Paul at their circus center doing some of the activities. And today was the first day the circus artists were in our building working with the children. This is tremendously exciting. We've turned our library into sort of a juggling center. There's all sorts of things happening in the gym, and these incredibly wonderful, creative people working with our children. So we're having a terrific time with that. I referenced the strategic planning focus at the beginning. I just wanted to give you a little update, say we are now in a new strategic plan cycle. We spent a lot of time last year talking as a board, talking as a faculty. We held a series of listening sessions with parents really to sort of do a deep dive into the key areas of our mission. And again, we decided to focus areas of the education program, communication outreach, and program sustainability. That breaks down into these priority areas. For education program, 3 big pieces we're attending to: educating for equity. This ties to our mission pillar to make the world a better place. We do a lot of professional development. Kathy will probably touch on this around what equity means for our teachers, for our students, for our broader community in our educational model. We're looking at the developmental needs of children. We are always reevaluating the structure in our multi-age model. We have a lot of conversation about what would it look like if there was an early years component at Prairie Creek. This is a conversation that's been hanging out there all the time I've been connected with the school, so we decided to get hold of it and get a study group going to consider, is that feasible? What might it look like if we added an early years program to Prairie Creek? At the moment, it's really just a research question. We have a subcommittee doing a lot of studying around that. I visited with Erin Bailey, who was tremendously helpful in explaining to me the model here in the Northfield School District. And we hope to come to our board later this spring with some recommendations around whether that is something we want to pursue more concretely as a school. The other area of focus in the education program, attending to the mental and physical health of our children. I mean, just listening to John and Leah's presentation, clearly mental health is something that all school districts are taking a look at right now, and we're no different in that regard. Communication outreach, we have been looking for creative, innovative ways to connect what we do in our unique mission with the parents in our community. So we've created a new website, put a few things in place. I'll come back to that more in a moment. And we also have a commitment to going out with our mission beyond the walls of Prairie Creek. A lot of that looks like parent education. But also we do a few things to connect with other progressive educators, both locally, regionally, and nationally. One thing we did this year is we hosted for the second time a small one-day conference where we invited other progressive educators to our school to engage in workshops with our teachers and give guest presentations. We're also preparing for the National Progressive Educators Conference, which is next fall, and will actually be held in the Twin Cities. So we hope to take a leading role as representatives of the Midwest as far as progressive education goes. Now, of course, program sustainability, we feel we're in a good position financially, but it's hard work. It's hard work with the way public school funding is to sustain any public program. We know that like anyone else, so we decided to make that one of our focus areas, to review our development model for fundraising, to look at our facility management, and to make sure that we're carefully looking at teacher compensation, how we best support our teachers in tough financial times. Those priorities have been broken down into annual action goals, and we probably don't have time this evening to dig deep into all of these, but I thought you might like to see the 8 key action goals that we're working on this academic year. I'll be happy to answer any questions about that, but I'm really cognizant of your time as well. There's a little slide on the Imagine Convents that I mentioned earlier. Communication initiatives. Just a snapshot of the front of our new website. I encourage you to take a look at it when you have time. We're pretty proud of it. We spent a lot of time developing it this summer. And one thing we wanted our new website to have was creative opportunities for both prospective and current families to learn more about our school. So a few things we're doing. We have several videos on our website. Some explaining just nuts and bolts things for families, some more philosophical about our progressive education mission. And one of those action goals is to create a series of what we're calling spotlights on different elements of our program. Basically, a 2-page summary, a philosophical insight into what we're doing to trigger some conversation and information with our community members. And that's just an example of the math one that you can read in its entirety on our website right now. Moving on to professional development. Kathy's going to talk in a moment. We have a very short, if you'll allow us, 4-minute video, which was created for us after we were awarded an innovation award by the Minnesota Association of Charter Schools last spring for our professional development model. And I think rather than listen to me, you might enjoy hearing, actually you will have to listen to me because I'm on the video, but not the whole time. We have teachers and children talking, which is wonderful. So if that's okay, we'll get that up for you. I think, let's see, Bruce, if I can do this. This will be a good tech challenge for me. Here we go.
And scroll down.
Yes.
Let's see here.
Wonderful. There it is. Thank you.
As director of the school, it's a wonderful recognition to receive the Innovation Award. It's a wonderful recognition because it really honors the work that the teachers have done for many years in our school, in fact throughout the history of the school, to commit to professional development as a way to enhance their own practice, but also enhance the quality of the learning environment for children.
I think that our professional development is innovative because it is entirely led by teachers and it is embedded in and informs our curriculum. We meet in professional development every Wednesday after school for 2 hours, and we really jealously guard that time. Work together to create a curriculum for ourselves, just as we do as progressive educators create a curriculum for our students. We can support each other in taking risks.
Commitment to working in committee structures that do a lot of the preparation and the thinking behind the learning that happens in those sessions outside of those 2 hours. What are the areas of focus and how do they align to our strategic thinking and action plans for the work we want to do with kids?
The committees are responsible for creating what we've come to call a narrative arc. We want to make sure that each committee guides us through a series of connected lessons on topics that are interesting to us and that we've chosen to focus on for the year.
I think another big one is striving for accuracy, because you're always trying to be accurate, just like you're always trying to never get a bug with persistent. Persisting is used a lot. Of course, you persist, but then you have other habits of mind, like questioning, posing problems, which is about thinking about problems, and metacognition, which is about thinking about what you're thinking about and thinking about how you're thinking about that thing.
This has been an ongoing thing that has developed from some of the teachers that I work with had experience at Wolf Ridge Environmental Learning Center as naturalists, and they brought that into their work here, but then we became interested in formalizing those outdoor experiences and bringing that to more of our classrooms.
So we do a lot with trees. We do phenology, where we've picked trees and then we gotten partners and we've taken data about them for the year.
I've been more observant about birds and the changes of buds, and
I think it's just fun to have for school every Wednesday so you can learn more about nature and not always be inside.
I think students would tell you really just like what life is like for them on a daily basis and learning environment, and that really encompasses everything. But professional development has informed structures around core values of play for us, how they play in the woods outside our school as they build forts, how they interact with each other in cooperative games, how they explore in the forest classrooms and the outdoor learning spaces in our school, how they engage in messy, practical math activities outside.
That culture of learning that we try to create for our students is echoed in our professional development as well. That we're always looking for what's next and what we want to make better and incorporate. We're reflecting on our own work. And those are exactly the skills that we're asking our children to do. That as much as possible, we want kids to have a reason to learn what they're learning.
One way we stay innovative is we keep asking ourselves questions. We deeply reflect on our practice at the end of every year within our practice of professional development, and we start looking forward to the next year and where we see opportunities for growth.
Bruce can get us out to the next slide, I think. And Kathy, who's in the video and leads our professional development program at Prairie Creek, has just got a few words to share, and then we can take any questions that you have.
Bruce, just minimize Chrome because it's the PowerPoint's behind it, I think.
Yeah.
Just click in there somewhere. There you go. Just get that one from the dock, Bruce. Go down to the dock in the lower right.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it out of the dock. There.
There you go. I think it's the one to the right there. Oh.
It gets stuck with that video.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bruce.
Technology.
Hello everyone, good evening. I have just the one slide, and I think that the video gave you a lot of information, so I will just highlight what we are focused on in our professional development this year, and then Simon and I will take any questions that you have. So each year, we work in 3 committees. Each committee is comprised of a K1 teacher, a 2-3 teacher, and a 4-5 teacher. Our special education teachers partner with us as well in the process. And the committees work together, and you can see the focuses that the committees have this year. In the video, we use the term narrative arc. It used to be a little bit more, a few years ago, before we put this structure in place, it used to be a little bit more sort of, oh, it's our turn to lead the professional development. What are we going to talk about? And so we've worked to put together something that's more like a curriculum for ourselves, as I mentioned in the video, where we look at what are the topics that we want to focus on for the year. We have a structure in which, in a meeting in which we do that. And then the committees have built in time during those Wednesdays to meet and to plan speakers and to find resources, articles for us to read, books to discuss in book clubs and things like that. And so these are our topics, and I think that it's best just to take questions now. Thank you.
Excellent. As always, really excellent presentation. So board members, questions, comments? Amy.
So this isn't a question exactly on your presentation, it's just something I'm curious about. I'm wondering about the application process in terms of how many students can you not serve who apply or who think about applying to the school? What's the demand like for Prairie Creek right now?
Well, I can speak to current numbers. I think in total we have about 60 students on our wait list. Most of the majority tend to be in the early years, so we currently have 30 students on our kindergarten wait list. That's pretty much been our trend data over the last few years, 50 to 60 students across the program.
And do you have a sense of how many people might consider applying but decide not to because of the wait list? Or?
It'd be very hard for me to come up with an actual number for that, Amy. Certainly we have conversations around that, and in years when we have a lot of applications, we just do try to have very honest conversation with folks that, know that we're a choice, but we're a choice where you might not get into the program. So be looking at lots of schools. It's great to have a collaborative relationship with our authorized that we have, because we can speak in an informed way about the great things going on in the Northfield School District and help folks get connected with the information to know what their other school options are.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Helen?
So Kathy, I'm hoping that maybe you could paint a picture of, with the three committees, maybe an example of how it's sort of played out. Like you mentioned, the committee gets together and kind of thinks about curriculum or book club suggestion, or then how does that flow through? I'm really curious about how this sort of teacher-led what it looks like.
Yes, thanks, Ellen. So at the beginning of the year, we get together as a whole staff and we brainstorm the topic areas that we are interested in focusing on for the year. We consider what topics we need for relicensure. We consider, standards review of the things that we need to do and learn over the course of our year. And then we have a system with Post-its, and we sort of assign those based on the topics of the committees. We assign the topics to a committee, or committees claim them, and we always have more ideas than we know we'll have time to learn about over the course of the year. The next meeting would be for committees to get together and take that list and to talk about how do we want to think about this over the course of the year. Each committee can lead 6 to 8 or 9, it depends on other must-dos and things that come up during the year. Planning for our Imagine conference, for example, took some of our Wednesdays. And so then committees talk together about how can we structure a series of lessons, series of experiences, what are some guest speakers that we might like to invite. We assign each other the jobs of doing research to find background reading and books and things like that. One example is the math committee has been focusing us on lesson study, the process of lesson study over the past several years.
Japanese one?
Yes, it started in Japan. And so that committee has sort of, when we first started it, that was a lot of that committee's work, reading the background knowledge and figuring out what lesson study is and how we might want to try to use it. And then we tried it the first year, found it to be a really valuable tool, and now it's become an annual practice for us. And because it's an annual practice and we've all had experience with it, it takes less of that committee's planning time. And so in this way, we can try new processes or new practices, and if they work and if they meet our needs, then we can build them in a structured way. That one committee sort of has responsibility for that, and they help us to get the materials we need, but it sort of it becomes a routine for us.
Great.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it's sort of a launch pad for some ideas, and then some of them just stick.
Exactly. Some of them stick and become new practices, and others, some change, and some, so for example, we've had a focus on equity for several years now, and one committee has sort of kept that and has been building our background reading and thinking about moving it from educating ourselves to infusing our curriculum to inviting in our parent community for those conversations. And so thinking about, long-term over years, how do we take a topic that's massive and think about bringing it into our work. And then other things may come, be a focus for 1 year. We focused on play, for example, for 1 year. A committee had that as a focus. And play, of course, is something that's important to us all the time, but it isn't always a focus of our professional development.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Great question. Other questions? Ross?
I'm curious, what you've been talking about is kind of things that you do collaboratively and communally. You're a small school, and I know you've got a lot of, really fine teachers there, but every now and then you must have a teacher who really individually needs work on some area of their practice. So that's not like group professional development. So you might need an intervention with one individual teacher. So, I mean, how do you handle that and to make it a supportive experience in such a small community?
Kathy can jump in as well, but that's an excellent point, something we're really thoughtful about. We have a couple of induction teachers. Those are teachers in the first 3 years of their practice, and I think we utilize systems that are probably not unfamiliar to a traditional model of coaching, mentoring, additional support from myself, additional oversight from myself, and that's part of our teacher evaluation plan. I think laid onto that are a couple of things. In the model we've set up here, having one teacher from each team on each committee, there's a built-in coaching model. All the newer teachers are spending this in-depth time with more senior teachers, but we also utilize things like QCOM. So we're a QCOM school, so our cognitive coaching model provides that more specific oversight for teachers about here's something to do with your classroom management that we're looking at, or here's something specific to reading and literacy that we can give you support on. And being a smaller school, I think we're much more in tune to where those needs are as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
No, I think I just reiterate that this structure puts us in committees with teachers from other grade levels, and we have built-in team time as well, so that I and my 2 4 5 colleagues have meeting time, and so in that way there's collaboration, both sort of horizontally and vertically, and we can support each other in those ways.
Great questions. Other questions, comments? No.
How do you integrate technology into your education process?
It's a terrific. That's actually been one of our professional development focus areas a couple of times during the last few years. I'll try and give you a fairly concise answer, Noel. I think there's 2 ways. There's the philosophical approach, which is how we approach anything else, where we start reading together. We look at what current research says around best practices with technology for students, and we think about that within the context of our progressive education mission. So for us, that's like we're an active, experiential program. We need technology that's flexible and responsive. So that's informed our approach to developing carts of Chromebooks and iPads and Apple TVs in each room, basically things that the teachers have the ownership and power and comfort using for that particular moment with a student, be that as part of a research theme for personal projects or to demonstrate a math concept. It can look like a lot of different things. We have in the last couple of years developed a pretty robust technology committee. We realized we needed some additional expertise in technology. It's such a rapidly changing field. We now contract with a company called Canopy Solutions. It's a small company that works mostly with small schools, and they meet with us once a month with our technology committee and advise us on things like they helped us decide on Apple TVs rather than smart boards as a tool in each classroom, because that was better for our particular need. With their advice, we purchased a mobile smart board that we can move around the building, because we often want to set up in different spaces. And on that committee, we have a teacher from each team. So we're really hearing from the teachers, what are they doing with kids? What do they need to do with kids? And we're also recognizing that things are changing. So where our personal projects once upon a time might have been created largely with research from books, kids are now using Google Docs as part of their research tools. They're accessing much more information on the internet, and we're trying to embrace that as part of our progressive education program.
Thank you.
Excellent questions. Amy?
So I'm jumping the gun a little bit here, but one of the ideas that I know we're going to be discussing in the future is a later start time. And I'm wondering if that's anything that you've discussed with your groups and if you had any comments on how that might affect Prairie Creek.
No, we haven't really discussed that. I mean, it's really great to hear what you're discussing, because we definitely sort of follow our lead as far as transportation goes. We're very much connected with the calendar and timing of the Northfield School Day. So I'd certainly be interested in how that would play out for our elementary program. We have a slightly later start anyway, I think, from the Northfield Elementaries because of transportation needs. So we're already a school where the instructional day starts at 8:15. I mean, I think that works pretty well for us, frankly, right now. The late start day turned out to be something really useful for us. It's interesting how these things play out. We wouldn't have planned a late start Wednesday, but we used that to create the 2-hour session on a Wednesday afternoon that the teachers engage in. So the teachers, they start an hour late on a Wednesday and then they stay an extra hour at the end of the day. So I think we would just be responsive to whatever happens there, but it's not been a big conversation for us, I don't think, Kathy.
I wasn't aware of it.
No. I'll look forward to hearing what you're considering. Yeah.
Okay, other questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you. We appreciate the presentation and really just collectively talking about Prairie Creek and Arcadia, and of course thanking Dr. Hillman for the work you do with them, and as a board how supportive we are of our charter schools, and we like to feel like the relationship we've established is really a model that could be used nationwide. And so we're really, we're always just really pleased to be able to support you, and look forward to hearing about your work every year. So it's been a great relationship, and we're really just, it will continue, and we're thrilled with that.
And I see Dr. Warrenson is ready to...
Yes.
She's
ready to go.
She's jumping up a bit, and I just want to return the appreciation and say, Matt, we're looking forward to seeing you on Friday.
With the circus in town.
Yeah. Dr. Hillman, that was. Sorry, I forget I'm in a very formal setting here. You're up, Dr. Warrenson.
All right. We welcome, this is Barb Warrenson, who is the director of Arcadia Charter School. So welcome, Barb.
Well, good evening. Thank you for staying. This is getting late. We'll make this fairly brief because I know after a long day I'm tired. I really appreciated seeing the Prairie Creek slides, partly for a couple of reasons. My kids went to Prairie Creek, and we have such a close connection to Prairie Creek. And immediately we were seeing kids, Lisa and I were just, oh, to see these kids when they were in 5th grade, and now we have them in 6th and 7th grade. They're growing up. And also because I'm on the board for the Minnesota Association for Charter Schools and got to be part of the team that selected the Innovation Award. So I thought that was pretty cool. So thank you. So the way I have started this is talking about our strategic priorities and what we're doing to address those strategic priorities. We put those in place last year and are working on that now to start putting specific strategies and tactics together. And then I've brought Lisa Malika, our school social worker and special ed coordinator. Everybody wears more than one hat. And she's going to talk about our emphasis this year on restorative justice, particularly in the whole school, and wellness of the whole child. And you should have a data sheet in front of you that you got as part of your packet. I just want to mention a few things on that. I won't spend a lot of time. It speaks to some of the arts, and there's another slide about that. But we also have residencies every year, and this year we had, well, this year in the fall we had, I always want to say, We Are the Willows is the name of it. I always want to say Wind in the Willows, but We Are the Willows. And last year we had the Arena Dance Company come, and they worked with the kids, and we'll talk more about that. There's some data there as well. You've got test scores. You can look past years. You can do whatever you want with that data. We did slip a little bit in reading and math, I think, this year, but we're, no, is that right? We're not too concerned. It was a small slip, and our finances remain positive, and our enrollment figures go back many years. We seem to be fairly stable. This is what I'm trying to convey to you. Here's some of the arts and residences we had. We had the arena dances last year, and the Vocal Essence Witness Program, which involves them coming and working with the kids, and then they go up to the cities and see the concert performed. We did Don Quixote as our student production. We arranged 6 theater and concert field trips. We do a lot with the arts at Arcadia. Now this is what we developed as our strategic priorities, and as I go through this, I won't go through the whole thing. Sean Fox is here. Sean is a parent of a Prairie Creeker, and our former, and also our board chair, so I'm sure if you have questions for Sean, that would be good too. In the middle is our mission. That has not changed very much. We just wordsmithed it just a little bit. After a whole process last year, the board and the staff, everybody, I think even the students got involved a little bit. The board came up with this set of strategic priorities. And these are the 4 priorities that we will go through. Iterate and innovate educational approach, articulate and share unique identity, our unique identity, support an engaged and fulfilled staff, and strengthen financial sustainability. So under iterate and innovate our educational approach, I suppose these are called sub-priorities, but we are trying as a staff and a board to realize more fully the potential of our projects and core classes to enhance each other and support each student's personal learning. In a nutshell, we're trying to get those projects ramped up so that we can see something quirkier, something more innovative, something that's really caught somebody, you know, and caught their imagination. We've also, in an attempt to remain innovative in a shifting educational landscape and rapidly changing future, this picture, this lovely picture, is from River Bend. Those are our students. One thing that we've done to reach this goal is create innovation days. So one day each quarter is devoted to some very innovative event. This year, those innovation days are planned by committees of teachers. So a committee it's a collaboration of teachers from multidiscipline and multiple ages and special ed all put together to develop what they feel would be a really innovative idea. They don't involve the children this year. Next year we probably will. I mean, as far as the planning goes. The first innovation day was the whole day at River Bend in Faribault. And they tested water quality. They went and tracked critters. They found, you know, all the stuff that you can imagine doing. A little bit of orienteering where most of them got lost, and that was exciting. So it was a very fun day. The second innovation day was kind of a surprise. The second innovation day was in early December, and I was on that team because I'm on the teams too. And our idea was to collaborate with the retirement centers, both here and in Faribault. So we loaded the kids in buses and we had a number of meetings with the retirement center staff from 3 Links and from NRC and from Millstream and came up with specifically interactive art projects. So each group was to create an innovative art project, something that's interactive that in the memory unit they might use, like a giant zipper, or how do you make something out of a doorknob that's interesting and people will actually try to interact with it. So, and it turned out to be great. I really didn't know what the kids would think, but they didn't either. I mean, they were a little worried about, well, I don't think I want to do this, but everybody had a wonderful time. And of course, our seniors in Northfield are amazing, and in Faribault too. So that was great. I know that they're meeting. Lisa's on the next team. I don't know what they're going to be doing, but they're getting pretty excited about it. So that's one thing we did. Oops, what am I pushing? Sorry. We're going to Japan. That's about as experiential and exciting as one can get. We're going to do it in 2020. We did take our first European tour this last summer, and that was amazing. That was great. So we decided to take 2 years before we have the next one to fundraise some money. And also because we're growing very interested in the Japanese culture. So one of our parents this year, I may be getting ahead of myself here. Well, I am. I'll talk about my parents in a minute. This is one of our most competitive sports at Northfield. This is our only competitive sport at Northfield. It's called Poetry Out Loud. It's a poetry competition that is national, and we've done it for many years. Rob is one of our judges, right? And this year, we did send some up to state. We don't know how they'll do. 1 year, I remember being able to tell you that we made it to nationals, but we're still doing it, and we're enjoying it. Articulate and share our unique identity and increase broader community awareness of what makes Arcadia unique. So part of this is, for instance, working with the retirement center staff. It's also working with other community groups. Last year, since I've talked with you, we had a former parent of a former student who happened to be a retiring math professor at Carleton, at St. Olaf, Kay Smith, and volunteered to teach AP Calculus. And she did. She taught it, went through the whole year. She taught AP Calculus. What a gift. What a gift for those 5 students. This year, we have Carly Bourne, who is a parent and a Carleton employee, and Carly is really interested in Japanese. And so she's teaching, she got a license and is teaching, volunteering Japanese and Japanese culture, which has to do with why we're going to Japan. And we just had our last project presentation night, and there were there was one that I attended on the geography of Tokyo, and I thought, this is just taking off. So we'll see where this goes. This is a May term project. This was furniture restoration, but again, the kids got to choose an activity during May term. May term, for those of you who don't know, is at the end of the school year. It's the last 2 weeks. And in this particular project, our art teacher got everybody to bring old broken furniture, and I wish you could see it. I mean, they ended up being beautiful. At our picnic in the fall, we lined everything up and had a silent auction and earned money for, of course, art supplies. Along the same line, increasing broader community awareness, this is an Eagle Scout project of one of our students who managed to bring in all kinds of people from the community. We were at VFW, we were at Eagles, we were raising money with omelet breakfasts and all kinds of things. This is the slab for a picnic shelter that is now in the back of our building, which was really nice. And he did it. That's Logan in the front with his father right behind him, and all the community helpers behind, and the Boy Scouts. The kids were so excited. That's actually not them working. They're just having lunch on the slab. It's just neat to think about it. The third priority, large priority, is to prioritize the social, emotional, and intellectual health of staff by increasing resources and access to opportunities. This is a staff workshop. We are continuing to work on this. What we have done to date is on that late start morning on Wednesday, we alternate so that we have Q-Comp meetings. We have content level meetings now. So we hadn't had that before. So the high school teachers of math sit down with the middle school teachers of math and the science and plan an overarching curriculum and how that's going, and talk about the projects that they're doing. And then we also have just the middle school and the high school meetings, so they alternate. And then we also have the staff meeting at the end of the day that alternates with the Q-Comp meeting. Our Q-Comp is very much our professional development program. They do most of that. And now I'm going to let Lisa talk a little bit about restorative justice.
Hello, everyone. So in the summer of 2017, 4 staff went to a week-long training. Barb, one of them, along with 2 high school general education teachers. We spent 5 days literally sitting in circle learning the restorative justice process. And now we're in year 2 of the implementation. So restorative justice circles have a very specific structure and function. So circles can be for community building, restoring climate relationships, can be around emotional intelligence. You can use them as a classroom activity and introducing a new concept. So what we're doing with our young people is teaching them this process. So when there is a conflict or a climate issue in our school, we can come into circle and we can resolve it collaboratively. Mary was able to sit in on one of my circles, a multi-age middle school circle, when they had the visit this past week. What's been cool is the wonderful feeling that the circle has. Once you sit in circle with no barriers, no tables between you, it creates a bit of intimacy and you have a natural connection with your young people. These are the 7th graders. So each middle school grade level has at least 3 introductory circles during their course of their year. And then we offer 3 elective circles throughout the school day. So there's a multi-age middle school circle and 2 high school circles that have been operating. One of the high school circles is in year 2 of operating, and it's interesting to look at the development, especially the emotional intelligence that has developed in those young people over time and their readiness to lead circles in the future. It takes about 5 years to fully implement restorative justice within a school. So that's one initiative that we've implemented in addressing climate and giving students a voice in our school. The second is we received a Change to Chill grant from Alina Health late last spring, and we're in the implementation year of the grant process. We've engaged in some staff training around youth mental health, teen mental health. At the beginning of the school year, there is engagement in parent newsletters. So there's information getting out to parents on a regular basis. Alina Health also supported an all-school experience at the Science Museum where we went to the Mind Matters exhibit. And you'll see that structure over here, that weight machine, is the worry shredder. And that was very popular with many of our teens that day, where they were able to write down a worry and shred it in the machine. I'm hoping to build one of those at our.
I was going to say, we're getting one tomorrow now.
Oh, it's amazing. It was fun to watch. I spent my whole day in that exhibit just watching the students interact with the exhibits, and that was the most popular one, I would say, up there. That we'll also have survey data from this year, which will be very intriguing for me to see, as I've been at Arcadia for 13 years now, just to actually have some data from an outside source rather than myself. And then on Friday, there's a rep from Alina Health coming in to do a focus group with our youth to find out what's missing, what's working, and what they would like to see. So if you ever have a chance, go to the Change to Chill site and see what else is going on. One of our young people, who happens to be my child, Ryan, was an intern over the summer that helped implement some of the items on the website. They had 10 student interns from across the state of Minnesota working with them over the summer. So that's what I have. Any questions? Thank you.
Questions, comments board members have? I think, it's always so interesting because you have so much that you can tell, and you know that you're held to a certain amount of time, but we always come away feeling like we really have a good handle on what's happening. And I think Simon said it when he said a very successful, well-run progressive schools. I think you have achieved that goal and then some. So we really appreciate that. And again, just to reiterate how much we appreciate the relationship that Dr. Hillman and you have built and mutually working together. I think Dr. Hillman has some comments.
Just the annual reminder that I think it's so important for people to recognize that you read or hear a national narrative about charter schools and their relationships with the traditional public school systems. We have to remember Minnesota is the birthplace of the charter school movement, and we are proud to be one of only 3 school districts in the state that continues to be a charter school authorizer. We are very proud of our 2 outstanding public charter schools and the role that they fulfill within the community. Northfield has public school choice as part of its DNA, and when you hear about the national discussion about school choice, you can't overlay that discussion in Minnesota. Minnesota has the most sophisticated system of public school choice, in my opinion, in the nation. And I do really believe that our relationship is a model for others. I want to just acknowledge that I have enlisted the help of Mary Grace Hansen, our Director of Teaching and Learning, as a main partner on our charter school authorizer team. Mary is now our voting representative at the Minnesota Association of Charter School Authorizers Group. And then we are doing the site visits together. And we do the formal site visits. We did the Arcadia one last week. It was fantastic. As always, one of our favorite days of the year. We have Prairie Creek coming up this Friday. But we also connect with people more than just that. So earlier this year, I was with Simon at Prairie Creek talking through a handful of things that he's looking at. Barb and I had a meeting earlier this year to talk about some strategic priorities that are down the road for Arcadia. We have a great relationship, and I just think it's so important for the community to understand that. You're hearing this national conversation about charter schools that can get a little bit divisive. Please make sure that you don't overlay that on our local discussion, because it is the opposite of what you hear at the national level.
At the meeting this morning at MAX, the board meeting, we were talking about relationships with authorizers and various authorizers doing so. And I said, we're doing this and that, and da-da-da, and our authorizer's great. And he said, who's your authorizer? And they were surprised, because I think this is now the only one in the state that's really doing well as far as a school district sponsoring a charter school.
Well, we do well because you guys do well, and because you've got great board oversight. I see Bonnie Jean Flom in the audience, a member of the Prairie Creek Board, and Sean Fox, and the people who volunteer their time on those boards provide that oversight for the autonomous nature of those schools. They are well run. They anticipate, and again, we have learned things from our charter schools, exactly what the original law was intended for, and vice versa. There have been some things that we have been able to help the charter schools in their journey toward continuous improvement. So it has really been a great relationship, and we are thrilled to continue that. And we don't even have a contract up for at least a couple of more years, so that's great. Less work on the report.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So we'll continue to work our way through the items for discussion and report, and I apologize for those that are continuing to wait to present. I think we'll be able to work through some things fairly quickly here. I do want to do a very brief summary of Dr. Hillman's mid-year performance appraisal. It was in the packet. So we did do a mid-year performance appraisal for Dr. Hillman for the appraisal period of July 1st. 2018 to January 1st, 2019. So for this review period, all 7 board members, including Margaret Colangelo, who was a sitting board member at the time of the appraisal period, completed the mid-year performance evaluation. The form covers many facets of the superintendent's job responsibility. It's quite extensive. There's 52 job responsibilities that we are evaluating. Board members are doing the evaluation. Numeric rating, 1 is low and 5 is high, as well as providing narrative comments. So as board chair, I compiled and summarized all board members' comments and input for Dr. Hillman. All written comments were shared verbatim, but were not attributed to a specific board member. As board member, I then met one-on-one with Dr. Hillman on January 8th, 2019 to review this appraisal. Board members gave Dr. Hillman a very strong performance rating across all key areas. His overall score was a 4.82 on a 5-point scale across the 52 areas. His exceptional work over the past 6 months was highlighted by board members, and I'll just briefly highlight those. One was his Dr. Hillman's exceptional work at administering all aspects of the district's bond referendum in November of 2018. Community's resounding support of the bond referendum, as is indicated by the 62% passage rate, was a result of just an outstanding effort by Dr. Hillman. His leadership is credited with the quality of all components related to the bond and its successful passage. And I think following the successful passage of the bond without even taking a breath, I think he got to work right away on addressing of the number of the critical and time-sensitive next steps. And most encouraging, I think, is his pledge to ensure vision, due diligence, and relentless oversight of the projects will serve to accelerate the community's trust. Secondly, Dr. Hillman's commitment to the district's strategic plan, was also highlighted by several board members, and his leadership in not only establishing but committing to the district's mission is one of his greatest strengths. He demonstrates his commitment to students day in and day out with the high expectations he sets for himself and others. He has a strong and well-defined vision for the district with both short-term and long-term goals that are well-planned and yet adaptable. And finally, Dr. Hillman's excellent management of the district's finances, one area we always highlight, but important. And Dr. Hillman and Director of Finance Val Mertisdorf are an exceptional financial team who maintain the district in sound financial condition and at all times have their responsibility as stewards of the taxpayers' money in the forefront of their decision-making process. So in summary, board members gave Dr. Hillman an exceedingly positive mid-year performance appraisal. His noted high level of knowledge, experience, vision, and enthusiasm, as well as his strength of leadership, gives the board great confidence in his ability to continue to move the district forward. So congratulations, Dr. Hillman, on an excellent mid-year appraisal.
Thank you.
And we just really appreciate the excellent work you do on behalf of the districts and our students. So congratulations, well deserved.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for the board's ongoing confidence and support. It sounds cliche, but that's who I am, and I am truly privileged to do this job. I really mean it, that this is one of the best jobs in the state and the best districts of the state, and it really is a true privilege to get to come to do this work every day. Doesn't mean it's easy every day, but I really mean it, that it is an honor to serve this community who has a very high level of expectation for its educational system in this way. So I am grateful for the chance that you continue to give me, and great feedback. I appreciate that.
Excellent, thank you. And thank you, board members' efforts for the compiling and the great care and attention you took to completing the evaluation and your great narrative comments. So, good. Okay, so we will move on to a short presentation by Director of Special Services Cheryl Hall. There were, again, information in our packets regarding the request to hire an additional non-licensed special ed EA. Welcome, Cheryl, and thank you for your patience. I know it's getting late, and I know you've had a long day.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, and it was a pleasure to be here for the presentations from the charter schools. They are great partners. Just real briefly, just a request for your consideration for an additional educational assistant at Longfellow or ALC. Sometimes we have changing needs of our students over the year that we are not able to anticipate, And this is a need to implement the accommodations in an individual education plan. You'll see the total cost there of salary and benefits for the rest of this school year is $12,210. There's approximately about 55% of that is reimbursed by special education, so the net cost there is approximately $5,494, and that is the summation of the request.
No, that's perfect. You gave very detailed information in our packet as well. So just to clarify, this request is just for the remainder of the 2018-19 school year.
Correct.
Okay.
We always reevaluate anything that is added during the school year. We reevaluate that for a need for the following year in our total projection model after we look at needs across the district.
Sure. Questions, comments, board members have? Ellen.
So thank you for keeping an eye on the target with this. One of the things that I was curious about is we've had an ongoing sort of challenge with trying to hire in special ed, and hiring in the middle of the year for a special ed EA might be particularly difficult.
Well, we actually have found candidates, so we've been lucky so far. We did put a temporary EA in place when this need came about so that we could evaluate what is the ongoing need, if there was going to be any ongoing need, and then so we do have someone that is able to stay in that position.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
And then that training and the pieces that need to happen.
I do think you should share, though, Cheryl, that we actually have been having some decent pools for educational assistant.
We've had some excellent pools of educational assistants. Not real deep, but the quality of our pool is still very good.
And I think that just part of that is the work that you have done as a board to ensure that our salaries in those areas are competitive for the market. And then in addition, we can't overemphasize how important our quality benefits package is, because we do know that that has been something that has attracted some of these very high quality candidates. There are places where just talking with some Big 9 superintendents recently, where they have not just one, not two, but dozens of educational assistant jobs that are unfilled.
Yes.
And so we feel very lucky, even though our pools have not been deep, we've had high quality, and it's been a critical enough mass to be able to attract high quality candidates. When we talk with our colleagues elsewhere, not the same, and I know that you're hearing that from special ed directors as well.
Absolutely. So yes, we appreciate all of the support.
Tom.
So what is a non-licensed special education versus a licensed? And is that why we are doing better in getting them?
We, all education assistants are non-licensed. It's non-licensed staff. Our licensed staff are our teachers. That's the difference.
Rob.
So this is an item for information, so would we be actually approving this next time, and is that enough time to
Correct.
do what you need to do?
That's actually a really good question, and one that I had really wanted to address, in that if the board, we understand the compressed timeline, we understand that there is someone in place, but you do have to move forward and make that a permanent, or at least a decision for the remainder of the school year. Would it be helpful if we were to be able to move towards approving that tonight in terms of timeline for you and addressing the need you obviously have with students?
Well, it's always helpful, but I also understand the process, so I honor the process that you would make, but absolutely, it is always wonderful if we can have an answer, but understand.
Well, we do have a precedent in that, particularly in the area of special education, whether it's licensed or non-licensed, that we understand that the timeline is something that's really critical. So if the board were to, we could entertain the possibility of moving it to an item for individual action, and unless the board shares some concerns about moving on it. Jeff?
Is there anything we don't know about this that would help, that wouldn't hinder us from voting on it tonight?
You have it's what you have in the packet it's the level of detail that would, and you know that with staffing decisions we try to follow a two-step process. One where we bring you the information at one meeting, and then we ask for the approval at the next, because we don't want board members to ever feel put on the spot that you have to approve this at this, we save that. There are times where we ask you to do that, but I think if you can think about the time most of you have been on the board, you can count on one hand in the last decade how many times that has happened. We try to be very thoughtful, we try to be very deliberate, because we want to make sure that you don't feel like we're putting you in a circumstance where we're asking you to vote on something every time on the first night. That's not fair to you. We want you to have time to think about it. But this is unlike in the past years where we've actually been proposing some additional licensed staff mid-year. This is a pretty straightforward piece. It is a single educational assistant position for a defined amount of time per day. You have the actual dollar amount that would be reimbursed through special education funding. So there isn't any additional information that we'd be able to provide you between now and the next meeting.
Well, and I think additionally, so I really appreciate you surfacing that. And I think one area where we have learned is that with special education and where we have a really a direct need that needs to be addressed, that we could do that. And I also believe it's a fairly modest proposal as well. So, Ellen.
So I guess I would move that we add this as an item for individual action.
Okay. So we have a motion to move this request to an item for individual action. Is there a second? Second by Amy. Any questions, comments? Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Motion carries. We'll move it to an item for individual action then.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for your support.
thank you, Cheryl. Thanks for hanging in there. It's gotten late. Okay. So we will now move on to the consent grouping. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping? There was, as a reminder, a few personnel items in the table file. So is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping? Is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Jeff. Is there a second? Second by Rob. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will move on now to items for individual action, of which we now have three items. First item is the resolution ratifying the award of the sale, determining the form and details, authorizing for the execution, delivery, etc. for the general obligation school building bonds. There is information in your packet, and then there was also a sale day report in the table file.
And we also have Shelby here from Ellers.
And we have Shelby here from Ellers and Associates. And again, Shelby, I apologize that the meeting has gone late. So we have a great amount of information regarding the sale of the bond. Did we want to do any preliminary information?
I think it'd be helpful if Shelby would share some preliminary information for
and
us.
Then we'll move to the item. Welcome, Shelby. Thank you for being here.
And we're happy to hear this news from Shelby.
Yes.
Not that we're going to do any spoiler alerts or anything. But.
So welcome, Shelby. We're thrilled to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me. And you're typically probably used to seeing Joel or Jeff or hearing from Barbie. They weren't available, and I really jumped at the chance to come and present the results because they're great. And I did the same for Detroit Lakes last week, and they were excited for you as well. So.
And this wasn't your first board presentation tonight.
No, I was at they're starting the process, Zambroda Mazeppa. So hopefully in a few months I'll be at this point with them. So first off, congratulations and a successful vote and a great week to sell. You got great bids, and your taxpayers will reap the benefits. So you sold bids last Thursday, and tonight is, I'll just walk through the sale day report, and then you'll ratify the award that was made last Thursday.
Okay.
11 bids was what you received from National. So you had the Midwest and a lot of out of New York. There just was not a lot in the market last week, as it turned out, and that really then drew a lot of people to bid on your bonds. So the winner was RBC Capital out of New York. The low bid there was 3.22. The summary of the results is listed there, and I'll just go into more detail as I walk through some of the schedules. So most important to note here is in the notes, compared to pre-sale, compared to pre-sale, and most importantly, compared to where you presented to the voters, you're about $3.9 million less in overall levies. So a real good result for the voters. So part of where we're at in January here is that you certified your levy in December, and we certified based on the estimates in the pre-sale. The results, again, were better than pre-sale, but since you already levied, you just capitalized less interest. So a good result there. The closing date is January 30th. That is the date you'll have the money to invest the funds. And the board action tonight is a roll call vote on the resolution to ratify the award. And I'll begin to walk through the attachments. So listed on the next couple pages are the names of the bidders. So RBC out of New York, with the true interest cost of 3.22, and then, like I'd mentioned, a couple local bidders: Piper Jaffray, Northland, some out of the Midwest, and then a lot out of New York. So great interest. Typically, we want to see 3 for sure, and we typically see about 5 or 6. So good interest. So the next page then, attachments, page 3, is the sources and uses. So the voters approved $40.975 million. You did receive a premium, that re-offering premium. So the underwriters paid more to ensure that down the road the secondary market would see the results they wanted. So they essentially paid you to offset the interest costs. So what that allowed you to do is offset some of the capitalized interest, and then allowed you to lower the bond amount. So you have a lower borrowing amount. And then your deposit to the construction fund is $38,459,621. The next slide there, or the next attachment page there, is your debt plan. So it shows your existing debt and then the proposed new debt. And the adjusted levy then, that $311,973, and approximately the middle of the page there, is what you certified. And so I think pre-sale estimates, the capitalized interest was a little bit higher at 1.3 million. So we're able to lower that interest amount because the average interest rate is lower. And what you'll see then below that 311,793 is the drop again for the following year, to where it will stay level over the term. So 146,350 is the levy for pay 20. And then another drop down again is scheduled after the debt is expired, the previous debt. So the visual of that is on attachments page 5, and you can see the drop down between pay 19 and pay 20, and again in pay 24 for a term of 20 years. The tax impact table is a little cumbersome, but I know Joel and I talked about showing you both what you had already levied in pay 19 and then what you'll levy in pay 20. So you can see the first set of columns there is the estimates prior to the election. So this is what you went to the voters with, and told them what their tax impact would potentially be. Was $27 a year on a $250,000 home. And then in pay, as a result of the bond sale, that amount is $25 per year. That was what was included in the pre-sale estimates and then confirmed here because of the certified levy. But in pay 20, it'll drop again to the impact being $12 per year for that $250,000 home. So. The attachments page 7 just shows where rates have been over the last couple of years, so the 2-year trend, and that peak there is pretty much when we were doing our pre-election estimates. So I guess they could have gone in either direction. Good news that they dropped, and dropped especially in January here. So the following pages then are your rating report. Standard & Poor's affirmed your AA+ rating. That's a great category. And very few districts end up in that AA+ rating, and just 2 in the state have that AAA rating, which are Wayzata and Edina, simply as a factor of their enormous tax base. So I shouldn't say that. They probably have a lot of good things going for them, but they have that.
We're happy anytime you talk about our lack of enormous tax.
So listed throughout the rating report are your proximity to the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, your high reserve levels that you have, your significantly stringent financial management. And this is something S&P looks to more so than some of the other rating agencies. So they really show appreciation for how you manage the district. And then again, the low to moderate overall net debt. So great results, great news for your taxpayers, and dropping down over time, and great week to sell. So congratulations. We also know you can choose to work with other municipal advisors, and we thank you for working with us.
Well, we just really appreciate Ellers and everything you've done. And we talked, when Jeff was here, and conference calls with Joel and Barbie, and just the path and the journey that has gotten us here. And we couldn't have done it without Ellers, and it's just really exciting. So thank you, Shelby, for being here as well, because we know there's a huge team behind those that we normally see to make it all happen. So it's really exciting, and I just love that you said normally we like to get 3, but we got 11, and we like to be curve raisers if we can.
Yes, we do.
So anyway, really exciting. Now that was quick, but we know we have the documentation backed up here for board members' further review. But with Shelby here, is there any questions that anyone has? No.
We always celebrate those who bring us good news. Thank you.
Yes.
The celebration should also go to the taxpayers.
Yes.
Who are going to be seeing $3,914 less than the pre-election estimates. Good job.
And I'd like to point out, just make sure we clarify this too. So because the interest rate and the direction that you gave in December, we are actually bonding for even a little bit less than what we had projected, which does, but we do have statutory authority to go to the 40.975 million. The bond sale allows us to have the amount of dollars deposited into the construction fund that will cover what we anticipate to be the cost based upon, the detailed estimates and the projections that we had worked with before the election. But I just also think it's fair to say that should we encounter some kind of quirky or some real market upheaval, we still technically have the ability to go and sell the remainder of those bonds, correct?
Yeah, you have about $2.4 million of remaining authority, and that has to do with, one, the amount the voters authorized, and then the sort of the calculation that goes into how much can actually go into the construction fund. So you do have that authority available.
And what I want to be clear is we don't anticipate using it. And I think this is an example of demonstrating that the voters approved, a ceiling amount, and we're not even bonding to that total because of this really incredibly great interest rate. Yet we still have the flexibility, should there be some kind of unanticipated market upheaval. We believe that the estimates are playing out the way that we have anticipated. It was confirmed through the selection of the architect and the selection of the construction management process, where they confirmed that those estimates really looked in line. But it's that point of we did not bond for all that we were authorized to, and I think that again demonstrates the great work that we've had with Ellers and the stewardship, that we're not just bonding to the total because that's what we're bonding to what we need to do. Yet if there was some kind of catastrophic thing in the market, we do have a little bit of room that we could do something else later. Okay. Not that we plan to be very clear, but
excellent. Yes, no.
The market you're speaking of is a construction market, right?
Correct. Yes.
Good point of clarification. Thank you.
And we should point out that it's going to cost the average taxpayer less than half what we had projected during the campaign.
Great. This is just excellent.
In terms of the increase, the increase.
Yes.
I just have a question about this document and how it fits into this whole picture, and so I understand what we're doing. That's a certification.
So the question regarding the resolution ratifying the award of the sale, the documents provided there.
Yeah. Well, I'd like you to talk about it, and then I'd also notice that all the blanks are blank still, so I'm not sure what the process is for filling in the blanks.
On last Thursday, I think at the time it was decided to enter into a parameters resolution to really.
The last time.
You went into that. So what happened on Thursday was an award of the sale by the superintendent and the board chair. So today you're ratifying what they did. Essentially, it's a procedural motion, and your bond attorney will take what has been signed here by the clerk and then fill in the blanks, and that'll be the official documents. So we're just giving the bond attorney some extra time to fill in the blanks consistent with the proposal form that was signed by the board chair and superintendent.
Okay, that's fine. It's just to me odd that the blanks aren't filled in before we ratify it. But I think since you've explained the process and we have the proper expectations of how the blanks will be filled in, I'm a little more comfortable with them.
And this is a standard procedure when you use a parameters guideline because it's quite a quick turnaround from the sale last Thursday through today. And so I think that's a key piece, Val.
So actually, I believe all the resolutions are set up this way because it actually asks who was present, who voted. So you fill that in after the vote's taken place, if that makes sense.
There's lots of numbers that are missing too, though.
Yep. And a lot of time it comes, you're selling them the day of. And so they come down and do that and fill it in. And I would rather have the experts, fill in the numbers than us to fill in the numbers.
And I think it's important, it has to be within the parameters that you voted on in December, which obviously these clearly are within those parameters.
Yeah.
Let's just, again, say 3.22%, compared to 3.9% that we had projected.
0.9 in the vote, yeah. Yeah, and this is a very typical way that this is proceeded with blanks in the resolution. And sometimes with the parameters, they do get filled in and sometimes they don't. And the bond attorney will work with our office and then follow of course, the proposal form. And then also what happens, you saw, and what was sent to you is the preliminary official statement. That has to be finalized into a final official statement, which we will work with the bond attorney to finalize that. And then the underwriter, so RBC, actually is the one that posts that as part of the disclosure. So it's kind of everybody working together to get the documents out there.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so this is an item for individual action. So is there a motion to approve the resolution ratifying the award of the sale, determining the form and details, authorizing the execution, delivery, and registration, and providing for payment of general obligation school building bonds, Series 1029A, as presented? Moved by Noel. Is there a second? Second by Ellen. This is a roll call vote. So Anita?
Hurwitz?
Aye.
Hardy?
Aye.
Stratmon?
Aye.
Quinell?
Aye.
Braniak?
Aye.
Iverson?
Aye.
Pritchard?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, excellent. Shelby, thank you very much.
Thanks. And I have a number of documents to sign, so we'll be here till the end of the meeting and then for signatures.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So our second item for individual action is the Greenville Park campus name. We did have discussion on this at our previous meeting in December. So is there a motion to approve Greenville Park Elementary as the official name for the district's new elementary school, Greenville Park as the name of the educational campus it sits upon, and to identify the official name of the district's early childhood center located in the current Greenville Park Elementary building at a later date? Moved by Jeff. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tom. Actually, had his hand up. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Discussion, questions, comments? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We do have the addition of the special education PCA increase. So based on the information provided by Director of Special Services Cheryl Hall, is there a motion to approve the hiring of a 6.75 hours/day FTE increase for a non-licensed special education assistant PCA at Longfellow and ALC until the end of the 2018-19 school year at a projected cost of salary and benefits of $12,210, with approximately 55% of the salary reimbursed through special education revenue for a net cost of $5,494. Moved by Ellen. Is there a second? Second by Amy. Are there any questions or comments? I'm sorry, Anita, that was moved by Ellen and seconded by Amy. Sometimes I get going really fast. Questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you again, Rob, for surfacing that and for us to be able to move on this need for students this evening. Items for information. In your packet, we had the enrollment report, construction update, as well as in your table file was a memo from Director of Child Nutrition, Stephanie Strummy. So we'll work our way through those. Enrollment report, Dr. Hillman.
Yes, so you have the latest iteration of the enrollment report as you get every month here. And so just for your consideration, if there are questions, we'd certainly do the best that we can to answer them at this point.
Any questions on the enrollment report? Okay, seeing no questions, let's move on to the construction update, something that we will be looking forward to seeing probably at every board meeting going forward.
Yes, you notice that it is, you might want to print this out, it's commemorative issue number 1. So what we will do is we will have a brief item for information at each meeting regarding construction updates. If there are items for individual action that need to happen through that process, that may take the place of an update from time to time. What we just want to make sure is that at every board meeting you have a semblance of what's happening. So just looking backward to December of 2018, we did start to solicit core planning team volunteers both within the district and outside of the school district walls. So using our staff newsletter, Todd Bornhauser at the Chamber of Commerce and Scott Richardson with Northfield Rotary assisted us by getting that word out to their members. They have some very large email lists that are really helpful. We also worked with Northfield News and KYMN and some of our other partners to recruit people to apply. We had, the last count I think was 76 people apply for those core planning teams. We then also, during that same time, recognizing that we can't have everyone on every single core planning team. There just are too many people to have all of their wishes fulfilled. We also offered the opportunity, and then for people who may not want to participate in those core planning teams, the chance to provide feedback about the project through an online survey. And so those items will be shared with the relevant teams as well, and that will stay open for indefinitely until we start those core planning teams for each different project, which will really be kind of sequenced, starting with the new elementary school, followed by the Bridgewater addition, followed by Sibley, followed by, in terms of setting them up in just a sequential order. We also then hosted a meeting with district staff and representatives from Knudsen Construction Management and Wold Architects to discuss timelines and expectations. That group will serve as what's called the project oversight teams. That's a group, and that will include Julie and Noel as well. In terms of those overseeing all of the kinds of projects in the system and just making sure that things continue on track. In January, we have finalized core planning team participants currently for the new elementary school. We'll be working this week to finalize the Bridgewater project team. We were planning tomorrow to have tomorrow we are having a kickoff event with core planning team members, architects and construction management representatives. Actually, I'm not sure the construction management people are going to be at that meeting tomorrow afternoon, but we'll have our first core planning team meeting, 3:30 to 5 over at the Greenville Park building, and Noel Stratmon and Ellen Iverson are the board representatives on that particular committee. We're also going to be taking tour of several elementary schools on January 22nd with that group. And then those core planning meetings begin every Thursday in earnest, starting January 31st, February 7th, 14th, 21, and 28th. That will encapsulate the first round of that plan. It's the big picture planning. And then once we get into March, they'll do some more technical, what we call user group planning. So that you'll see that in the next coming report. We'll also be working in January to schedule the core plan teams meetings for Bridgewater and for Sibley. So these things are getting going pretty quickly. I want to thank Val Mertsdorf and Jim Kalseth, who've been working on finalizing the details of the contracts with Wold and with Knutson, and I mean, it's ramping up quickly, and it's going to be a good sprint for 2 years. We're all digging in because it's a great opportunity we have to really impact several generations within the community, so we're very serious about oversight and making sure that we have that practical vision, and it's exciting. It's go time is what it is. So
It's good stuff.
that is your
my
first construction update.
Amy, and I have a question. I'm delighted you're collecting all of this feedback from everybody. And my question is, will you please send out the links to the board members so we can distribute them to people who ask us?
Absolutely, you bet.
And also, I assume, so we can use them ourselves. Because
Absolutely.
even though we'll have some feedback in an official capacity, it might be nice to be able to give you any feedback online as well.
Absolutely, and we'll be sharing all of those pieces of feedback with those core planning teams. And it's like anything else. We've got already there's you look at some of the projects and we have opinions on opposite ends of the spectrum. In terms of various different things. So we won't get into that now, but it is exciting for people. People are engaged in this. They are interested. They want to know what's going on, and it's time to get this party started. So. And
can I assume that the forms are general enough so we could so if someone comes up to me and says, I have a great idea for Sibley, I can say, great, there's a form.
Absolutely.
And just send them the form and I can put it on them to.
You got it. It is a very open-ended form.
Okay.
They pick which project and then they provide the feedback.
Tom?
Do you have any updated construction dates? Is Greenbelt still going to break ground end of June or anything? Or?
Well, that we are still on the track that we believe we are to begin with. The key thing will be once we do the bid date, right? And so that will be this process will go through March. We're still looking at staying on that same track. That's what we have at this point. And the goal will be to get that ground broke on the first project this summer. So the key thing will be when that bid time comes, in terms of, it says we want to make sure we keep on track with the timeline so that we're able to make sure that we are able to bid it at an appropriate time. And one of the advantages of going with a construction management firm is that they don't have to bid the whole thing at once. They can start to bid. So for example, we are actually already starting a little bit of, this part's not a bid process, but we are working to get a geotechnical engineer to do soil boring to determine would geothermal be a real option on that campus at Greenvale Park. So that is an example of something that's going to be happening sooner rather than later, so we can make that as part of the discussion. If we could do that, how awesome would that be if it was able to be? We just don't know if it's even feasible yet or not, but that's your first step,
Sure.
and so that process is rolling.
Excellent. Other questions, comments?
So I'm still hooked on this link. I love the idea of the link, and I'm just wondering how you're planning to distribute it. I know you send it out to Rotary and such, but are you sending it out to parents? Are you sending it out in the community services brochure? Are you putting it in the Northfield News? What are you doing?
Yep, so it was in the Northfield News. It was, we talked about it on KYMN. It was sent out to all parents when we recruited. It was in the same email message that we sent to all parents about participating in the design teams, and then they wanted to provide the feedback in that way. It went to Rotary, it went to the chamber, and it is something that we will make sure that anyone who wants to have the opportunity to share it. As we get closer, we'll also start to put that on and publish out on our social media sites as well, and go from there.
Is it on the district website?
I can't remember if we have it there. We are converting from the bond website, the bond referendum website, to the construction part of the website. We just met with Newburgh Communications last week. Our plan is to have a section of the website where these construction updates are housed, and then any kinds of news and updates that people want to look at. We want people to be able to look at this 2 years from now. And our vision is in the fall of 2020 that people will be able to look back and see on a fairly regular basis updates about how we got there. So that part is in transition from the bond referendum portion, to the construction portion of it, and that link will be included.
Great.
Excellent. Other questions or comments? All right, great. We look forward to having all of those updates, and I like the format that you'll present those in, so excellent. Then our last was an item in the table file regarding some administrative review.
Yeah, and so Stephanie Strummy,
Child Nutrition.
Director of Child Nutrition, just wanted to make you aware that we have been selected for these 2 reviews. It's not our first rodeo with this kind of thing, and we have come out very well in our other child nutrition reviews. It is every year, schools are selected. In this case, it's both a federal and a state audit, I believe, correct, Val? They're looking at both.
Well, it's a federal program, so the state will do the audit, but it's considered a federal program.
So we tend to have been an audit magnet lately, you know, and
for the last 8 years since I've been here, not just lately.
and the good news is that we have actually we've had very good results with these, but we also always learn something that strengthens us for the next time. So we welcome people to come in and take a look at it, but it is just a piece that Stephanie wanted to make you aware we've been selected for that federal program review.
Well, and I think it's just selected. It isn't selected based on any sort of preconceived concerns. It's just that we were fortunate enough to be selected.
Typically, these types of audits are on a rotating, like 5-year cycle.
I think they just wanted an easy audit, so.
There you go.
Well, we welcome the opportunity because we know that there's really good oversight in those programs. But in addition, being a district of continuous improvement, we welcome feedback for our improvement.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, so those were our 3 items for information. So future meetings. We balance of January, Monday, January 28th. And then in February, we have meetings on Monday, February 11th and Monday, February 25th. All those meetings are at 7 p.m. in the Northfield High School Media Center. With that, I ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Noel. Is there a second? Second by Tom. So we a very long meeting this evening. I thank everyone for their great comments and their the work that we did this evening. So with that, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Good work, teams.